Debut or Die Chapter 1 by Beck Deoksu. Isn't it the universal rule that if you open your eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling, you're in a different world? Well, it wasn't like that for me. So why did I wake up in a moldy motel room? Ugh, my head was splitting open. I clutched my forehead and sat up. The musty-smelling blanket slid onto the floor. Let's see. After I found out I'd failed the civil service exam again, I think I fell asleep while drinking alone. Does this mean I crawled from my one-room apartment to this motel? That's crazy. I cursed myself as I stumbled into the bathroom. I needed to relieve myself and check my drunk face in the mirror. Not that I needed a reflection to know I was a washed-up exam taker. Then I fell back after I saw the mirror. Ugh, fuck, I cursed on impulse, clenching my jaw in disbelief. With a shaking hand, I touched my face. Then I looked in the mirror again. The stranger's face was still there, a skinny, good-looking young kid. I caught my breath, fighting off panic. I wanted to smoke, even though I'd quit. I just realized my voice sounded completely unfamiliar. I felt like biting my tongue. What kind of situation was this? Barely keeping a grip, I inspected the motel room with my unfamiliar body. I found a letter that looked like a will and an empty medicine bottle. It seemed this guy had tried to kill himself by overdosing on sleeping pills. Skimming the will, it talked about him being an orphan and a high school dropout. How he felt lonely and life was unfair, so he wanted to leave it all behind. I felt bitter. Even after switching bodies, I was still an orphan. On the cheap dressing table, I found the wallet he'd left behind. Inside were a few banknotes and this body's identification card. Park Moonday So X20. The number starts with a 3. So young. Feeling discouraged, I checked the photo. It looked better than the wasted face in the mirror, but still gloomy. Even with that gloom, his face was handsome and youthful. Was he really 23? He looked younger. No, this wasn't the time for that. I tried to think calmly. Somewhat understanding the situation, I managed to calm down. I needed to find my original body and think of a countermeasure. Maybe the guy who tried to kill himself had ended up in my body. Taking the wallet, I opened the motel door, and I froze. Outside the window, snow was falling, but before I got drunk, it was July. What the hell? I swallowed hard. Then I rushed back inside and snatched the calendar from the desk. 202x December, a calendar from 3 years ago. My vision swam. It didn't take long to calm down this time. That was because more than traveling to the past, the body swap was the bigger shock. I sat on the bed and sighed. Why didn't I remember any winning lottery numbers? After that useless thought, I raised my head. Honestly, maybe this wasn't the past, but a completely different world. A crazy idea, but overwhelmed by this insane situation, it felt convincing. This kind of thing happened often in the webtoons and web novels I used to read. Wasn't it called hunter fiction? Status window, I mumbled, feeling silly. Of course, nothing happened. Damn. In shame, I punched the bed. Of course it wouldn't appear, you idiot. Park Moonday, Ryu Gunwoo. Level 0, title, none. Vocal, C. Dance, visual, C. Talent, characteristic, infinite potential. It appeared? I rolled right off the bed. Ugh! Even as I grunted in pain, a thought crossed my mind. The status window's content wasn't what I expected. Now that the status window is real, I could calm down properly. This situation defied physics, making it clear this wasn't a joke. I left the motel for a nearby PC cafe. I had to check if there were other variables besides this world being 3 years in the past. Just to be sure, I asked the clerk to call my old number, but it was unavailable. I couldn't log into my university account, and the SNS account I made for coursework was gone too. In conclusion, it seemed the original me didn't exist in this world. Not that I had much regret. My parents died in an accident when I was in middle school, and I'd lost contact with all my relatives by college. I didn't have any close connections left. Any relationships I did have faded the longer I prepared for the civil service exam. Thinking about all that wasted time, it wasn't strange that I'd given up on people. Here's the ham ramen you ordered. Ah, thank you. Having coldly assessed my life, I took the tray. Slurping the ramen, I stared at the search engine. Right, 3 years ago was when I'd started studying seriously. I'd canceled my smartphone and internet, so these sites felt unfamiliar. But it didn't feel uncomfortable and felt exactly like 3 years ago. The popular trends from then were everywhere. Games, movies, songs, idols. Idols. I put the chopsticks in the empty bowl and crossed my arms. That status window, no matter how I looked at it, the stats were specific to idols. Did my entering this body have something to do with the status window? Did its original owner, Park Moonday, want to be an idol? Or was it because of what I did in college? I didn't know, but I should use what I can. Status window. Even whispered almost soundlessly, the translucent window popped up again. Vocal C, visual C. The rest were blank. Was that because I hadn't tried them yet? I considered it, but decided to wait. I wasn't about to test dance and talent here. I needed to check the status window's other functions. I remembered the karaoke sign I saw on the way in. Oh. First, the results. A C rank wasn't low. I could sing fairly well. Good tone, decent volume, clear vocalization. The basics were solid. I had talent. More surprising was the window that appeared. Achievement accomplished. And level 0. 1, you have obtained 1 point. Achievements, as I muttered, another window appeared. Achievements in progress. 10 attempts, 0, 10. 100 attempts, 0, 1, 100. First experience, 0, 1. 10 experiences, 0, 10. And the list scrolled down endlessly. So it was about repetitive grinding. The numbers got absurdly high further down, and half were blanked out. I got the idea and closed the window. I had a point now, so I should use it like in a game. I called up the status window. Remaining points, 1 was now displayed at the bottom. Distribute 1 point to vocal. The window updated. Name, Park Moonday. Ryu Gunwoo. Level 1 title, none, vocal C+, dance. Visual C, talent, characteristic, infinite potential. Vocal went straight to C+. Was this real? I immediately sang the same song again. It's better? There was a definite difference. It was easier on the ears, more refined, as if my throat had learned how to sing it properly. And the characteristic in the status window, infinite potential. For normal people, performance depends on innate talent versus effort. Effort has limits, a ceiling called potential. But this window showed effort was ridiculously efficient, with no growth limit, and I'd confirmed my skills actually improved. I stroked my chin, idols. Did this mean I should follow this new path? At that moment, a pop-up appeared over the status window. Outbreak. Status abnormality, debut or die. Red text lines followed. Debut or die. If you don't debut as an idol within the time limit, you will die. Remaining period, D365. What? What the? Choose one. Whina is likely a typo or sound effect that doesn't translate well. The message was ridiculous, but I felt a foreboding chill. The situation was already insane. Who was to say more strange things wouldn't happen? As I finished reading, the pop-up vanished. Sure enough, a new entry was added to the status window. Status abnormality, debut or die. Is this for real? Fuck, I swore, covering my forehead. A cold sweat broke out. I'd already confirmed the status window was real. I couldn't ignore the possibility this damn message was real too. Why did this appear? 'Cause I thought about idols? I laughed incredulously. But then another thought hit me. It can't be. Is this punishment for selling idol data? Yeah, idols. A familiar field, for personal reasons. In college, I made decent money as a paparazzi substitute, taking pictures and videos of idols. In the process, I'd done some shady things for cash. I saw and heard all sorts of rumors. Environment shapes a person. Running around on those jobs, I'd unnecessarily immersed myself in that world. I'd studied it voluntarily back then, so I was quite knowledgeable. I wiped the cold sweat from my face, crossed my arms, and stared at the status window. I didn't know what was happening anymore. It was absurd and infuriating. But I had no intention of dying. I needed to stay calm. Right, my life was wasted anyway. This was a chance for a fresh start, and on favorable terms. Plus, to find out why I entered this body, I needed to use this unrealistic status window more. My self-rationalization was complete. I grinned a sour, crazy smile. Around this time, wasn't there a hugely popular idol survival program? Chapter 2, Idol Joint Stock Company. Around this time, survival variety shows were garnering huge audiences. Tens and hundreds of kids aspiring to become idols gathered on these shows, with auditions held by public voting. The format became massively popular, leading to many similar programs. Idol Joint Stock Company was one of them. But it got exceptionally popular for a reason. It was more evil in a capitalist way. For starters, this was the advertising slogan for Season 1, "Your idol stocks grow as much as you buy them." That's right. The slogan meant voting was done by buying stocks with actual money. This year, the program was launching its third season. After Season 2 failed for various reasons, they came back with an ambitious new slogan, relisting, acting as if the previous season never happened. Because of this, many people ridiculed Season 3, saying it would fail with the same overdone concept. As for me, I was busy preparing for the civil service exam back then and didn't pay much attention. Anyway, contrary to expectations, Season 3 was an unprecedented hit. Despite controversy and criticism, it gained huge popularity and ratings. The group that debuted from it entered music sites with 80,000 fans and sold 600,000 copies of their album in the first week. So I decided to become a contestant on that very program. I went out to take the first step. All right, everything's done. As you requested, I didn't cut much from the sides. Yes, thank you. My appearance was finally looking good. I examined my finely trimmed hair in the salon mirror. Over the past few days, after sleeping and eating well, my gloomy look had faded significantly. Thanks to that, my face looked good even with my forehead exposed after cutting those stuffy bangs. Just then, the woman next to me getting a perm offered some praise. "Oh, student, you look so good now. So handsome and tall." After thanking her, I went to the counter to pay in cash. I'm glad there was still money in the account, I thought, having checked at the bank. Looking at the history, it seemed the original Park Moonday hadn't touched his parents' insurance money. Sorry, but I needed to use it. I'll earn money and repay this initial amount. Maybe I should donate the rest to a children's welfare society. I felt a bit bitter. While getting a registration copy and a new phone plan, I'd looked into his situation. It was clear his suicide wasn't an impulsive decision. He'd left his rented room, he was late on rent and forfeited most of his deposit, and his phone plan was terminated. Moreover, he did it on his birthday. It seemed he truly wanted to die. Well, I could understand him. I felt that way too. May you be in a better place. I offered a moment of silent respect and concluded my thoughts. Then I opened the salon door and stepped outside. The midday sun was bright. There was still much to do to achieve my goal. First of all, I need to become a contestant for real. I already knew the program's missions, the debuting members, and even the unexpected theme song. Of course, I'd missed some details while studying for exams, but right now, there was no better gateway than this. If I could just pass the second elimination, I could still get scooped up by a small or mid-sized agency once the program blew up. The decisive problem was that the open audition recruitment for the season had already ended. However, I knew a potential loophole. I was counting on putting it to use. My goal was to become a contestant on a survival program whose auditions were closed. And I had to do it within a week. Not at a broadcasting station, but at a neighborhood karaoke. The plan hinged on a story I remembered. At a photography club after-party, a guy known for gossiping had rambled on. JJC, Idle Joint Stock Company? One of the writers there is totally crazy, he'd said, claiming he heard it from a relative at the station. He went on, she recruits contestants at places like karaoke's, near the broadcasting station. In Sung X neighborhood, she picked up some commoner while scouting karaoke's and got berated by the PD. She's a nobody, but made a huge ruckus. She's totally a crazy bitch, right? He kept talking, but it was the kind of nonsense people spout when drinking. It was rare to see someone dominate a whole party with such boring gossip. The general unspoken consensus was, who invited him? And let's not invite him again. I didn't believe it either. I was more focused on the free alcohol. However, someone surprisingly corroborated it. That recruited commoner was Lee Go-yoon, a voice said. Lee Go-yoon was the female idol who debuted in Season 1. She was popular for her pure looks, cheerful personality, and clear dialect. Several people were impressed. Whoa, she was one of the debuted members, right? Yeah. Wow, how did you know that? The senior from the Department of Mass Communications, who was graduating soon, replied calmly, that crazy bitch is my older sister. The gossiper was instantly silenced. Everyone playfully scorned him. That expression was, he stammered. But she was never berated by the PD, the senior continued coolly. Instead, she received a higher pay. After that, the guy sat quietly. I was just thankful for the peace to drink. As the senior shared more about the recruitment incident, I listened while drinking. I remembered the situation clearly because it was so ironically funny. She explained that when the open auditions didn't yield enough likable contestants, her sister would scout karaoke's near the broadcasting station for a week. Someone asked, isn't it better to get street singers? They're easier to recruit. Actually, she avoided most singer wannabes, the senior replied. If she wanted a true commoner, she looked for someone with a refreshing character, unlike typical survival show hopefuls. She wasn't recruiting for debut potential, but for someone completely clueless to make the show more entertaining. These days, agencies train idol trainees to watch their words. Ultimately, a commoner contestant could become a sacrifice for the program's entertainment value. Of course, that's not important right now. The important thing was the high probability that this writer was still using the same method for Season 3. It's hard to let go of a method that once brought success. Since Season 2 failed, the pool of preliminary contestants might be worse, so she might be working even harder now. Let's be objective. This Park Moon-dae body was scrawny but handsome and quite tall. His singing voice was good. There was a clear chance he'd get picked if seen. Also, I need to level up. I had to invest in my stats by grinding achievements. I needed to be striking enough to catch her eye. I grabbed the microphone, chose a song, and sneakily glanced at the karaoke room door. It was made of glass. While the interior was bright and open, it also meant people could see in from the outside. That was precisely why I chose this place. The person I was waiting for was a broadcasting writer. Busy with preparations, if she was scouting for commoners, she'd likely check easily observable spots near the station. This karaoke was the perfect choice. Without hesitation, I booked 10 songs in advance. Skipping the preludes, I started singing. Achievement accomplished. 10th attempt. Level 1, 2, you received 1 point. It didn't take long to get the achievement for 10 songs, the easiest one. As before, I invested the point into vocal. My level changed from C+ to B. Testing it again with the same song, the improvement was undeniable. My fundamentals felt stronger. My tone was richer, my volume better. It seemed each letter grade upgrade brought significant growth. At this rate, my early stage growth would be unbelievable. But right now, something else demanded my focus. I'm a person in this line of work. I was found faster than I expected. My timing was off, but it was an unexpected early success. I accepted the business card from the woman wearing glasses. She looked tired but deliberately brightened her voice to make a good impression. Just as I had hoped, I had her interest. The name on the card was the one I'd been waiting for, Ryu Sorin. The senior from my college was named Ryu Sojin. Just from the names, they're definitely sisters. Student, what's your name? The writer asked. My name is Park Moonday. Your name is unique too. Please think about it carefully. I think you have star quality. Our program is great at finding people with that material. Thank you, I replied, not acting too delighted. If I seemed overjoyed, she might think I was expecting this. Those types often got weeded out in preliminary screenings. Seeming pleased with my subdued reaction, she added, Student, you're handsome and you sing well. If you appear on our program, you could really shine. Would you like to do a filming test today? Pardon? I feigned surprise. Eager to seal the deal, she pressed a little. Yes, please contact your parents. They'd be happy to hear their son was scouted for a TV program and is visiting the broadcasting station. My parents aren't here anymore. The moment I said it, I saw a flicker in her eyes. A writer spotting a compelling story. Selling a narrative was essential in survival shows. A tragic backstory was gold. She quickly masked her excitement and softened her tone. Gosh, I'm sorry, that was insensitive. It's all right. I just meant you should think of it as a fun visit to the broadcast station. This is a rare opportunity. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded. The writer's face lit up immediately. You've made a great choice. The broadcasting station is right nearby. And just like that, I achieved my first goal. It was an even smoother start than I had expected. Chapter 3. Not much happened when the writer took me to the broadcasting station. I just had a quick interview in front of a camera. They didn't even ask me to dance, which should have been a formality. Of course, they also didn't suggest I join a dance academy. This was clear evidence they had a specific role in mind for me on the show. But that didn't matter to me. The important thing was that my name was now on the contestant list. However, there was one unexpected twist. The first filming was much earlier than I had anticipated. In 10 days, I asked. Yes, the writer replied. Park Moonday SI. You came in right at the last minute. A free spot doesn't usually appear like this. You're very lucky. It's because you're good that you got this spot. She had a nice way of phrasing, you're just a replacement. Feeling slightly flustered, I thought it over. Her offer was worded pleasantly, and appearing on the show cost me nothing, so it was a good deal for me. Of course, if I turned out to be useless, they would act as if they'd never praise me. There are few fields where people cut ties as quickly as in this one. Furthermore, asking a commoner to prepare a performance alone in just 10 days without any help was an unreasonable demand. They said it so casually, but if I were from an entertainment company, they might have heard complaints. It was like telling me not to bother with a custom arrangement. Just use any instrumental track and accept the potential backlash. If my performance wasn't notably bad, they'd probably just edit me out. But I had expected this much. Yes, thank you, I said, nodding as if I were simply nervous about the upcoming filming and hadn't noticed anything suspicious. A look of satisfaction crossed the writer's face. We're the thankful ones. I'll contact you with more details, she said, signaling the end of our meeting. I left the broadcasting station without regret and began planning my strategy for the next 10 days. With such short preparation time, it seemed I would need a more extreme approach than I'd initially planned. After a hectic 10 days, the day of the first filming arrived. As with any survival program, it started with the evaluation of each contestant's performance. This first evaluation was critical. Anyone familiar with idle survival shows knew that first impressions rarely lasted until the end. For a contestant without a standout factor, being vaguely average was the worst outcome. It was better to fail spectacularly and become a joke, then have a storyline about improvement, than to be edited out for being unremarkable. That didn't mean I should aim for viewer hatred, though. Everyone remembers their number, right? A staff member announced. When your number is called, please enter the corridor. The filming began with contestants entering the corridor one by one for teaser shots. This 40-second teaser took over 2 hours to shoot because there were 7 contestants. They're all so young and innocent, I thought, watching the faces scattered around the cavernous waiting room. My motivation wavered slightly. Here I was, a regressor with a status window, feeling embarrassed about aspiring to be an idol among these kids. "Excuse me, hello," one of the boys said, approaching me after making rounds talking to others. I couldn't tell if he was genuinely excited or just putting on a show. He looked like a middle schooler. At my age, I'm building connections with a middle schooler. "Did you apply on your own?" he asked. "Yes." "Wow, me too." "Ah, may I ask your age?" "I'm 20 years old," I said, itching to admit I was shaving 9 years off my age, but it felt strangely satisfying. "Are you from an entertainment company?" "No." "Oh, usually in IJC, many contestants are from companies. Were you in one before?" "No, I was never in an entertainment company." "Ah, I see." Instantly, the middle schooler's sincerity vanished. He concluded our conversation and moved on to someone else. He already understands how society works at such a young age. This kid will go far. Of course, he'd need to learn to hide that attitude from the cameras, but I was sure he'd manage. Anyway, if a middle schooler is already this strategic, what a competitive environment. I wondered if I'd made an absurd decision by getting caught up in this unrealistic situation. But there was no use crying over spilled milk. "We're moving to the filming site," a staff member called out. The shooting was finally starting. I followed the crowd of kids moving like a school of fish and waited for my turn by the main stage. They called me up in the early middle section of the order. "Contestant Lisa Jean receives a B rank, 5th place. Please take your seat. Thank you." One of the contestants being evaluated bowed at the MC's words. He was part of a group of 4 from the same company. While he had some potential, the production team didn't seem particularly interested in him. "This is severe," thought writer Ryu Soren, spinning her pen and knitting her brows. The number of investors for Season 3 had dropped compared to the previous season, unsurprising, given that Season 2 had failed. Using the bold slogan, "relisting," the production team was determined to erase Season 2's shadow. But no matter how many connections or plans they had, some things couldn't be hidden, like the contestant pool. Better trained candidates had gone to other audition programs. To hit exactly 77 contestants, they'd included many subpar kids, making the skill gap obvious. If there were too many weak contestants, no amount of editing could make the show entertaining. In Korean audition shows, a talentless kid rarely gained popularity. Even with good editing, one mistake could lead to being labeled boring or a fraud. At least she had finalized the top-tier contestants, who could be pushed toward the debut group. With them, the show could proceed even without a dark horse. The kid coming out now's like that, too, she thought. The current contestant was a last-minute recruit, replacing someone who'd gotten a DUI. She had no expectations for him. His name was what again? Well, he'll introduce himself. His voice was decent, and his looks weren't bad. If nothing else, they could use his backstory. He was just barely better than a random substitute. Well, he can be used for comparison. The judges looked uninterested after skimming his profile, which had nothing exceptional except his family situation. Yeah, it would be better if he fails spectacularly. That would get attention. If performances were consistently mediocre, viewers would get bored, but extreme failures added drama. As the saying goes, mockery is still a form of attention. A commoner who'd only had 10 days to prepare alone would likely be hilariously bad. She watched the stage with mild expectation. "The next contestant, please enter the stage." The commoner contestant walked onto the stage. Fortunately, he'd found a good salon. His face looked more handsome than before. The problem was his peculiar demeanor, bored, almost gloomy. Last time, it might have been due to his family situation, but was he like this in front of all these cameras too? He was actually desensitized from his time as a substitute photographer, but the writer wouldn't know that. Is he the type who doesn't show nervousness? Not that it mattered. They could easily frame him as an arrogant kid who couldn't perform well. The writer's mind was already busy crafting narratives. On stage, Park Moonday listened to the MC. Yes, contestant, please introduce yourself. I am Park Moonday. Nice to meet you. He bowed. The judges let out soft snorts. Wait, is that all? A male judge asked, laughter in his voice. The question carried a slight negative tone, hinting that he should introduce himself properly. But Park Moonday simply nodded seriously. Yes, I don't have anything in particular to introduce. The judges burst into laughter. Whoa, what a unique friend. He's funny, they whispered, their comments picked up by the mics. Looking at your application here, there's really nothing. Yeah, true. They seemed to be holding back the inevitable, why are you here question, likely saving it for after his performance. The production team thought they might have a good clip. Then please show us your performance. Yes. With a mix of curiosity and mild malice, the contestant took the microphone from a staff member. The instrumental track began to play, and everyone was confused. Why had he chosen this song, Chapter 4? Huh? Several of the judges began whispering to one another. T-Holic. T-Holic had been a hugely popular male idol group that won the Artist of the Year award for 3 consecutive years. They had been inactive for several years because many of the members were completing their compulsory military service. Instead of waiting for everyone to come back, the agency had promoted the youngest member's solo career since he had yet to enlist. He'd released a mini-album with a title track that boasted an addictive chorus. After some time, people began to realize that the true value of the album lay in its B-side track, Party and Me. To everyone's surprise, it even climbed up the music charts and made it into the top 3. A popular female artist had recommended the song on her social media. Then it was used on several entertainment shows, kickstarting the song's wave of popularity. With rich band instruments and a stylish synthesizer tune that paired well together, the song was pleasant to listen to and was frequently covered at college festivals. In the end, it managed to make the top 100 songs list for the year, and without a doubt, the instrumental coming from the speakers on stage at that moment was that song. The iconic intro was accompanied by a unique accordion melody. Of course, the song was considered to be a masterpiece. It would certainly help the contestant stand out if he sang it well, but that was what made the song choice even more strange. Many would wonder, is it possible for an ordinary person with absolutely zero experience in this field to sing this song? The song was a risky choice. It was neither a major hit song from a popular idol group, nor a classic piece sung by an established artist. It just wasn't the song that would typically come to mind for an initial audition, regardless of whether it was an idol survival or singer survival audition. In both cases, it was a jarring song choice, especially since several years had passed since the song had first gained popularity. Seorin hadn't bothered assigning him a song because she had assumed he'd give a pretty predictable performance, which was how she had found herself in this unexpected situation. It went without saying that the production team should have checked the contestants' song selection beforehand, but there were 77 entrants in total, and the staff hadn't bothered wasting any of their precious time on a mere substitute. Now they were facing the consequences of that. It will be hard to compare him to any of the others with this song. Soren tapped the table with her pen irritably. Initially shocked by the contestant's song selection, the judges were now waiting for the intro to end with a slightly apathetic air. Finally, Park Moonday began to sing. I remember who I've always been, not just in the shining and dazzling seasons, but also all the times I felt weary and weak. At the end of these endless days, the one who will embrace my broken self will always be me. Yeah, it's me. He was good. The song began on an offbeat, but he came in at the correct time and then flawlessly sang the first verse in a soft voice. Not many people would notice because he sang with such ease, but the song had a very tricky beat, It was the type of song that could easily reveal that the singer was an amateur, but the contestant was able to hit every note no matter how complex the beat was. Da, 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 da. One of the judges, who had been unconsciously tapping his finger to the beat, jolted with surprise at Moonday's perfect rhythm. The general audience wouldn't hear the intricacies of the beats, but would be left with the impression that he sang well since his notes were timed perfectly with the instrumental. Besides, his vocalization is pretty good. It was actually incredible. It wasn't that he was loud. The way his mellow tone resounded made it sound like it was almost three-dimensional. Did he sing this well at the Norebang? Seorin tried to recall how he'd sounded on the day she had first met him, but he couldn't have been this good. If he had been, she would definitely have filmed a longer interview with him and even helped with his song selection. Did he improve this much in just 10 days? Oblivious to her shock, Park Moonday continued singing, moving from the first verse into the pre-chorus. That's why I must commemorate myself, so that I won't ever forget again. Yes, remember, until this very moment, even when the notes climbed like a bird in flight, he didn't produce a single flat note, nor was his breathing unnatural. At this point, something else caught Soren's attention. The judge's shocked expressions. I've managed to live through another day. That itself is a wondrous miracle. Don't forget it. Don't erase it. So remember and celebrate this moment. That's the party in me, as if every day is a party. Ooh, let's party. He hit the high notes perfectly and with ease. It was as if he could go an octave higher if he wanted. His voice sounded so effortless and crystal clear. Rather than yelling, the method required was that the singer delivered the song as if speaking softly and beautifully. Seorin felt like laughing in disbelief. Okay, this is actually great. He's certainly main vocalist material. I mean, we were lacking vocalists, so hasn't this turned out perfectly? I have a good eye. Who knew I'd find such a gem recruiting a random guy off the street? The song proceeded to the second verse. While the melody was the same as the first, the rhythm was much more complex. Moonday pulled it off as easily as breathing. His voice didn't fail even once as he moved into the bridge and toward the final chorus. The way he hit the high notes sent chills down everyone's spines. He didn't exaggerate, but didn't sound careless either. It was, in a word, a superb climax. He returned to the first line of the song like he was finishing a conversation, and with that, the performance came to an end. I remember who I've always been. Moonday maintained a nice tone until the final note. As soon as the instrumental ended, he bowed and said in a dazed manner, "Thank you for listening." There was a brief moment of silence. Soren gripped her pen and thought, okay, we're keeping this one. As she mentally readjusted Moonday's role in the show, the judges picked up their microphones with great enthusiasm. Wow, Moonday! Yes? You know you're amazing, right? I practiced hard so I could give a good performance. One of the judges interrupted. No, I'm telling you. This is something you're born with. You've got talent. He was a choreographer infamous for his blunt attitude. Anyone could tell he liked what he'd heard, based on the way he was grinning from ear to ear. There was a chance that he was exaggerating, but he wasn't the type to say anything he didn't mean. Screaming with joy on the inside, Moonday bowed appreciatively as the judges continued to give positive feedback. Muti, a female singer who was starring as a vocal coach, seemed especially impressed and showered him with praise. First of all, I'd like to say that your tone is very refreshing. You can hear that very clearly, since your vocalization is so good. I know, right? It almost felt like he was whispering right in my ear. True, true. The others all expressed their agreement eagerly. Muti nodded, adding, also, your voice seems like it would suit many genres that are really important for an idol. You also don't seem to have developed any bad singing habits, so I'm very much looking forward to your future performances. I mean it. Thank you. Moonday, you've never worked with an agency before, right? Earlier you mentioned that you have no experience in this field, and looking at your application form, that's certainly true. No, not yet. At this, a young male judge cut in. He was a popular idol, whose group had lost 2 members recently because they had chosen not to renew their contracts with his company. Does that mean you've never taken any lessons before? Yes, that's correct. Nothing at all? Not even after school lessons? Park Moonday nodded silently, and the judge seemed impressed by this answer, if slightly skeptical. Beaming, Muty spoke again. Yeah, it might be better for you to wait for your big break rather than signing a contract with just any random agency at this point. I'm sure you'll be able to secure a good deal. Thank you for your kind words. Sioran suddenly remembered that Muty's agency was preparing to launch a new boy group soon. That's right, Muty owns shares in her agency. Glancing at the contestant, who was bowing his head politely, Sioran noted he didn't seem all that impressed. When she looked back at the judges who were showering him with praise, she suddenly had a strange feeling. She felt like they had fallen into a trap. Discovering a talented contestant was a win for the show, but for some reason she felt unsettled. Resting her chin on her hand, Sioran stared at the microphone Moonday was holding and was suddenly hit with the realization he didn't do a proper dance. Of course, he had performed a few moves that resembled dancing, but since the song itself wasn't produced for being performed on stage, the moves were very simple and couldn't be called choreography. Ordinarily, the backup dancers would give a legit performance, and the actual idol would just move their hands and feet according to the rhythm while singing, but anyone who watched his performance would remember the song's official choreography. So despite the contestants' lackluster dance moves, the viewers wouldn't think twice because the original performance was like that as well. This was especially true since his singing was so good. Besides, no one could deny the song belonged to a top-tier idol. By choosing this song, Moonday was able to be considered for his singing abilities alone and avoid being questioned about whether he was serious about being an idol. Ultimately, this was the best song Park Moonday could have chosen in his situation. This goes beyond just having good sense, it almost feels crafty. Feeling somehow deceived, Sioran studied Moonday with a dissatisfied expression. As if reading Sioran's mind, one of the judges who had been sitting quietly until then picked up her microphone. Her name was Youngren, and she was from a girl group called Saint You, which had gained overnight fame after someone uploaded a fan cam of them performing acrobatics in the rain while smiling. The dance you just showed us barely passed for choreography. Can you perform something else that shows your dance skills better? Soren very nearly clapped with glee. I did it. It was worth singing the song over and over for the past few days until I'd gotten sick of it, because in doing so, I had majorly leveled up. After transferring all my points to singing, my level for that category rose to A. It was the obvious choice. You had to sing well to succeed as an artist in Korea. This held true whether you were an idol or an ordinary singer. If you couldn't dance, that could always be fixed with intense practice. But if you couldn't sing, not even a pre-recorded track would save you on stage. Also, when it came to idol trainees, there were always fewer people pursuing the position of the main vocalist compared to the position of the main dancer. If you were able to establish yourself as the main vocalist early on, you had a better chance of securing a spot in the debut group. The next important step had been choosing the right song for the evaluation. Seeing as I had barely received any negative feedback, it seemed as if I'd chosen the correct strategy. I had predicted what criticism I was likely to receive from the judges based on my weaknesses and avoided any song which might summon those negative comments. What's wrong with your dancing? I deleted any songs that had hardcore choreography from my list. Why aren't you dancing at all? I took out any slow love songs, too. You sing well, but I'm not getting any idol vibes. I excluded all songs that weren't originally performed by idol groups. I must say that you were overly ambitious trying to perform this song all on your own. Since I didn't know how to rearrange songs, I avoided taking any risks and stayed away from all songs that were sung by more than 3 people. To be frank, I'd rather listen to the original artist's version. I eliminated all songs that had been released within the last 3 years. Then, from the songs that were left, I chose one that ranked high on the music charts. Thinking about it again, it was definitely a good strategy. I thought I'd be able to pass the first round without incident. But, of course, there was always at least one person who wasn't swept up in the atmosphere. I made eye contact with the judge, holding the microphone. It was a face I recognized. She was the idol who made me realize I could earn money taking pictures of idols. Thanks to her, I was able to earn enough to pay tuition for the second semester of my freshman year. It was a win-win for both of us, since she became famously known as a hard-working idol, thanks to the video I took of her doing acrobatics in the rain. Unfortunately, this time, and it didn't seem like we'd be benefiting each other in any way. I understand that you've never received training before, but since this is the first round of auditions, we still need to know whether you have the basics down or not. I'm sure you must have come prepared with at least one song. It'd be crazy if I said I hadn't prepared anything. In fact, it would be worse than keeping my mouth shut. Yes, is it possible for me to do this song? One of the crew hurriedly approached the stage and gestured me over. I told him the name of the song I had in mind. The camera followed us and filmed the moment the staff jolted, surprised. Seeing this, I was sure I'd avoided ending up on the cutting room floor. My efforts had paid off. The studio was then filled with a rhythmic melody, Chapter 5. The intro to the wildly famous song was followed by the sprightly voice of the vocalist. As I struck the iconic starting pose that I still somehow remembered, one of the judges spat out the water he was drinking. Oh, same here. I've got a crush on you, too. My heart keeps racing. I feel like popcorn. Pop, pop. The popping beat resonates. My heart feels like it's going to explode. The only person who was bopping her head along to my simple steps and watching attentively was Youngren, the judge who had asked to see me dance. It seemed like she was the only judge capable of keeping a straight face, especially during the part of the song that half of all people my age could dance from memory. Pop, pop! You're my popcorn. Oh yeah, you control con. Control my heart. The chorus of Marshmello's Popscon, which had been released 10 years ago, exploded from the sound system and rang in my ears. Infamous for being one of those songs you should never listen to while studying for the CSAT exam. Popscon made numerous students fail their listening tests after getting its bizarre lyrics and addictive melody stuck in their heads. For the record, I had been one of their victims, but couldn't retake the test because I didn't have the money to do so. Pop, pop, popping popcorn, ooh! The song was so popular that lots of people made dance covers and uploaded them online. That was how simple the choreography was. If I was being perfectly honest, even elementary school kids could easily pick it up with a little practice. If I had performed this 10 years ago when the song was still popular, the judges would have roasted me alive. However, I chose the song because I thought I could evoke a feeling of nostalgia, and the judges would hopefully consider it a funny song choice. It went without saying that I was dancing as best I could with a totally straight face, even if others found my performance funny. It would raise eyebrows if I gave them the impression I wasn't taking it seriously. I needed to communicate to them that I had worked hard to prepare the dance to the best of my abilities. As a matter of fact, I'd worked very hard on it. Through repeated practice, I leveled up and completed the first movement and 10 movements missions. It seemed like I'd made a few mistakes since some of the judges were laughing hysterically, but whatever. They'd evaluate me however they wanted. It was beyond my control now. I completed the choreography up until the final pose of the first verse. Hanging my head, I heaved as I tried to catch my breath. The sound of applause brought me back to reality. Thank you, I said. Although Youngren grabbed the microphone first, the choreographer guy was the first to speak. I noticed that his eyes were red, most likely from laughing so hard he'd cried. Oh, wow, sheesh. That was the last song I expected to hear. Moonday, weren't you like 10 years old when Pop and Con came out? Did you perform that for a talent show as a kid or something? No, nothing like that. I chose this song because I'm a huge fan of Marshmello. This response made the judges laugh even harder. The last album that Marshmello released came out 4 years ago. Since the peak of their popularity had been so long ago, it was a very peculiar thing to hear a 20-year-old declare that he was a big fan of them. The age gap was so huge that it wouldn't do anything to damage my prospects as an idol. Normally, it was the first rule of being an idol that you never expressed any interest in the opposite sex. Sure enough, the choreographer guffawed once more. Next to him, Muty muttered to herself fondly, "Oh, that's cute. He did his best, I'll give him that," the male idol judge said, weighing in. It seemed that any suspicions he'd had that I was lying about my lack of experience had completely disappeared. Finally, Youngren spoke. "This doesn't mean you did well." I had a feeling she'd say that. This was the moment when the editors would cut to a close-up and include some dramatic sound effects. They'd also probably add a huge red caption of what she'd just said, repeated 3 times with a "da done" sound. Imagining how the show would be edited here, I waited patiently for her to finish speaking. "First of all, I can tell from the way you move your body that you're not very skilled at dancing. Even if you receive a positive evaluation now for creating a good atmosphere in the studio, you have to understand that future missions will be very challenging. I will be prepared." I meant the status window would be prepared, not me. All right. Youngren seemed like she had more she wanted to say, but she settled for just nodding gravely. Finally, she smiled slightly and said, "In any case, I can see that you worked hard. Well done." "Thank you." I felt like I had said that at least 10 times today. Is it always going to be like this? As I thought to myself, the judges put down their microphones so their voices were inaudible to the contestants and started discussing amongst themselves. Now, the program's next cruel twist was about to be introduced. From the first round, the contestants were to be ranked from 1st to 77th place and seated accordingly. The contestants would immediately go to their assigned seats after the judges gave their evaluations, even though they were only temporary rankings. If a seat was filled but the next contestant performed better, everyone would move down a rank and yield their seat. One of the show's selling points was the frequent shots of the lowest-ranking contestant moving to their new rank in tiers. Fortunately, it didn't seem as though that would be my fate. I guessed I'd rank at about 24th place. Park Moonday ranks 17th. They had no doubt purposely seated me about 5 ranks higher so they could film some shots where I moved down in rank, which meant that my actual rank was closer to what I had predicted. I have a feeling my rank went up by 4 or 5 places just because I made everyone laugh. It was likely that given time, as the judges became more objective, I'd have to give up my spot to the middle and high school kids auditioning after me. I found it kind of amusing that I was bowing my head gratefully when, in reality, I was dissatisfied. "Thank you. I'll put you through some hardcore training so you can get a better ranking next time," said the choreographer with a grin. His friendly demeanor would change the moment I didn't improve, so I was glad I had the status window. Hopefully, I can create a scenario in the future where the choreographer is moved by my progress. I bowed once again and headed to the set where all the seats were arranged. They were each labeled with a number, and the higher the rank, the more luxurious and comfortable the seats were. The difference was glaring. My seat at 17th place was a leather chair like the kind you might find in a corporate executive's office. After sitting down, the contestant across from me, who ranked 15th, approached me to say hello. He had a friendly demeanor and seemed to be around Moonday's age. "Hi," he said. "Hey," I replied. "Your singing was amazing." "Thank you, I'm sure you did great as well." "I'm sorry." I meant to say I couldn't be sure since I didn't see his performance, but judging from his ranking, he probably did. And thankfully, he didn't seem to take my words the wrong way. He just laughed loudly and pointed at the name tag on his chest. "I'm Lisa Jean." Hearing his name, I almost groaned out loud, but tried to keep my face neutral as I replied, "I'm Park Moonday. Nice to meet you." "Same here." Bringing the conversation to an end as naturally as possible, I turned to look at the stage, just in time to see the next contestant come on stage. However, all I could think about was the name I had just heard. Lee Sejin. That was the name of one of the contestants who had successfully debuted through the show. You could say I'd just met someone who was destined to emerge victorious from the show. There was one problem, though. A year after the show ended, he was involved in a drug scandal. Worse, he was responsible for distributing. I was pretty sure I'd seen his name on the 9 o'clock evening news while eating at a soup joint near my studio apartment. Lee Sejin from Idol Incorporated, arrested on suspicion of distributing drugs. "Let's not talk to him again." The earlier I cut ties with him, the better. All right, I should use this time to check my status window. Name, Park Moon Day, Ryu Gun-woo. Level 5 title, None Singing, A, Dancing D, Physical Attractiveness, C+, Charm, C. Trait, Infinite Potential Status. Abnormality, Debut or Die, points remaining. 1, I must have received a point after leveling up just now, most likely because I'd completed the first performance mission. I'd also been assigned stats for dancing and charm. Both traits hadn't been assigned any grade yet when I was practicing. Did that mean I could only receive points from official performances? I wasn't sure what the exact requirements were yet. In any case, just as I had assumed while practicing, this Park Moonday really had no talent in dancing, even though he possessed a passable charm. Couldn't any average person manage a D for dancing? I concluded that I'd have to invest points in dancing 2 or 3 times if I wanted to be able to get anywhere at all. On the other hand, the physical attractiveness stat gave me hope. Although I hadn't used any points on that category, the level had gone up since I'd been taking care of my looks. This meant that I could increase my stats without having to use the level up feature in the status window all the time. It was promising news. There was another pop-up, however, which was quite peculiar. It was a small one that appeared next to the status window. A successful performance. You've impressed the majority of the audience. Pick your general trait. Click. Something weird is happening again. Still, seeing words like success and impressed, I had a good feeling this was going to be a reward. I pretended to scratch my head and subtly pressed the button. Upon doing so, something interesting appeared. It was a picture of a gray slot machine. The images in the slot were already spinning round and round beside the lever that had been pulled down. It gradually slowed to the point that I was able to make out a few of the inscriptions on the slots. Several of them were colored yellowish copper, while most were just gray. Stout-hearted, eraser for embarrassing moments, crocodile tears. Sleep is for the dead. Look at me. I mean, it's nice that I can guess what each trait is for from the slogans, but aren't they a little cheesy? No longer so enthusiastic, I watched the slot machine closely since it would stop soon anyway. With several dramatic pour sounds, pieces of confetti exploded from the slot machine. It finally stopped on a yellowish copper slot. Trait: Sleep is for the dead, D obtained. When activated, you will not feel tired even without having slept. Comes with an additional 30% increase in the rate of acquiring experience points from 0:01 a.m. to 4:00 a.m. Lasts for 1 week, single use only. This would absolutely come in handy in the future. The name is still so cheesy. In any case, it was literally a random prize system, an essential feature of any luck-based, doomed-to-fail game. Things were getting fun. I noticed that at the very bottom of my status window, Sleep is for the dead, deactivated, had been added to the trait category. I'd have to consider carefully when the best time to use it would be. Contestant Kang Minjo ranks 56th place. The evaluations continued, and aside from the potential druggie next to me, I hadn't seen any more of the winning members yet. I watched the next contestant come on stage. He had long limbs and a slender build. He was alone, so I could tell he didn't have connections with any of the other trainees. The contestants already seated by their ranks started whispering to one another. It wasn't because he came on stage alone. Oh, wow. That's insane. It was because he was super good looking. I could hear the judges openly reacting loudly from below the ranked seating set. He's got such big, beautiful eyes, like a deer. Even I could tell that based on looks alone, this guy didn't have to worry about not being able to debut. Frankly, he needn't have bothered going on a survival show. I'm pretty sure he had a future in the entertainment biz no matter what. However, the name on his tag wasn't one that I recognized, Seon Ah-hyun. If he hadn't been able to debut despite being so good-looking, he must be incredibly untalented. He was more handsome than most of the idols I took fancams of. If he has a status window like me, all his stats excluding physical attractiveness would have to be between D and F. If only I could see other people's stats, I'd know for sure. Much to my surprise, the moment I had that thought, a window appeared next to the contestant. So I could see other people's stats, too. Name, Seon Ah-hyun. Singing, B, A. Dancing, A-X. Physical attractiveness, A+, S+, charm, B, A+. Trait, fortitude, deactivated status, abnormality, lack of self-esteem. Those were some impressive stats. With those grades, it'd be a breeze for him to rank within the top 10 in this round. Did the letters inside the parentheses indicate his maximum potential? That meant he had a promising future ahead of him. However, it was the last category that stood out to me the most. Status abnormality, lack of self-esteem. Seriously? With those looks? It'd make more sense if his status abnormality was arrogance. Regardless, it was a huge advantage to be able to check the other contestants' stats. If things didn't work out, I might even be able to make a living working at an entertainment agency as a casting manager. As I read each category curiously, I heard the MC's voice. All right, could you please introduce yourself? Seon Ah-hyun picked up the microphone with trembling hands. Hi, look. The kid wasn't stuttering merely from stage fright. His speech pattern was awkward, and it was obvious something more was wrong. He was showing clear symptoms of a speech disorder. I could also tell that he was very self-conscious about his stutter. He was exuding anxiety and embarrassment. That explains it. I immediately understood Seon Ah-hyun's stats better. But with his good looks and talent, the production team could have made a dramatic, moving story about his speech disorder. So why wasn't he able to debut in my previous life? Is it because of the lack of self-esteem status abnormality? I wonder if I can find out more. Lack of self-esteem. Despises himself. All stats decreased by 2 levels. Another window had popped up. I didn't expect to be given more details after only thinking about it. How useful. Maybe I should check my own status abnormality to see how many days I have left to live. I was being sarcastic, but to be honest, I was honestly shocked that his status abnormality was so harsh. If I had gotten his debuff while gaming, I would have just called it quits. Frustratingly for the poor guy, this was real life, which meant there were no resets. Ah-hyun, do you perhaps have trouble speaking? I got into an accident when I was young. Oh. And so began the telling of his sad backstory. More accurately, Seon Ah-hyun attempted to explain to the judges about his condition, while the production team tried their best to turn it into an emotional moment. The contestants around me began to deliver contrived reactions as well. One of them, who looked particularly emotional, tears already gathering in his eyes, was sure to be used by the production team as a reaction shot. He was even delivering a line, "That's so sad." Such an overreaction could read as inappropriate when it came to sensitive topics like this, though. If the editors didn't incorporate his response carefully, he'd receive backlash from the viewers for being insensitive. I stared straight ahead without any change in my expression. After saying a few empty words of encouragement, the judges gently asked him to perform. Well then, Ah-hyun, let's see what you have for us. Oh, okay. His performance wasn't that bad. Overall, it was a stage the judges would see favorably overall. Once again, the information in the status window was correct. His performance was weaker than his actual abilities. Seon Ah-hyun ranks 18th place. This is what happened when you didn't have a steady mindset and a good strategy. It was hard to believe that he ranked lower than me with those stats. The judges' evaluation was good overall. Either the judges thought he was talented, or they just didn't want to voice any negative remarks. Good job. We look forward to your next performance. The judges each offered a heartwarming compliment or two. One of them even gave the kids a thumbs up, but Seon Ah-hyun looked dejected and just hung his head in disappointment. Trying his best to smile, he stepped down from the stage and was led by the MC to sit next to me. Should I say hi? Seon Ahiyun glanced at me but didn't say anything. I didn't want to make it seem like I was snubbing him, but it was also too much of a hassle to strike up a conversation. When I nodded to him in greeting, the kid jolted in surprise and nodded awkwardly several times. Next up, we have 5 contestants who will be evaluated at the same time. Choi Jin-soo, Hong Sung. As I counted the remaining contestants in my head, I sighed softly. We still have a long way to go. Chapter 6. I was tired and my eyes felt dry. The shameless producers had kept everyone on set until all 77 contestants had finished performing on stage. Even during the break times in between auditions, the most we were allowed to do was go to the bathroom in groups. It was probably because it was difficult to manage dozens of feisty young adolescents. But I was running out of patience with the whole thing. A mere glance at their status windows told me everything I needed to know about my competition. And every performance I'd witnessed so far had been pretty bland. I'd seen plenty of real idols performing on stage when I'd worked filming fan cams. Of course, performances from trainees failed to impress me, though I had been surprised a couple of times. I glanced up at the 2 people currently seated on the plush-looking sofa. They were the contestants who were currently ranked in 1st and 2nd place. They both came from a well-known agency, were indisputably talented, and had the stats to reflect that. I knew that both of them had debuted successfully in my past life, and one of them had even finished in 1st place. It would probably improve my chances of debuting if I sucked up to them, but the idea of participating in cringeworthy adolescent back-scratching, more suited to someone 10 years my junior, made my skin crawl. Let's shelve that for later when the team missions start. Thankfully, it seemed as if the shoot was slowly wrapping up. Contestant Ryu Chung-woo ranks place. He forced his way in at the top, I see. The final contestant had landed in the upper ranks, which were already packed. That pushes me down to 22nd. Not bad. Not bad at all. In fact, statistically speaking, I'd ended up ranking higher than at least 7 contestants who possessed better stats than I did. I'd have to perform consistently well. If I wanted to keep that, I'd been overestimated on the down low. Thank you, said Chung-woo, a genial expression displayed on his face. The former member of the national archery team stepped down from the stage with a grin. I'd heard he'd won a gold medal competing on an Olympic team, but that was the extent of my knowledge. He'd been one of the contestants who debuted on the winning team. Since he was an Olympic gold medalist, he would be exempt from his compulsory military service, which no doubt made him a more appealing candidate to agencies. Wait a second. Will I have to serve my military service again? In my previous body, I'd received a grade 4 on my physical exam and been assigned to serve non-active duty at City Hall. The thought was scary and hadn't occurred to me until now, but filming ended before panic could take root in my brain. And cut! Good work, everyone. Please move along, contestants. All right. There was scattered applause, and responses called from around the room. My head was spinning as I followed the staff out. I'd have to check whether Park Moonday had completed his physical exam yet. Before you board, please take your ranking cards. The dormitories were only a 10-minute walk from the studio, newly built on the hilly land behind the broadcasting station after the breakaway success of Season 1. The production staff still insisted on driving us there, however, and the reason was simple. They wanted more footage. This was only made more obvious when they assigned us vehicles based on our ranks. Contestants 10th place and above, please come this way. Wow, is that a limo? Holy cow, this is great. No way. The top 10 contestants all posed with their thumbs up to the cameras as they entered the limousine, the lowest-ranked contestants visible in the background. Those ranked from 51st to 77th place have to make their way on foot. Although they tried to make the best of it, some even cracking jokes. I could see a few were fighting back tears. The cameras followed those individuals unrelentingly, The cameramen seemed to have a razor-sharp instinct for sniffing out the misfortune that would flavor the show. If I was honest, it was kind of disgusting. Hey, this isn't bad. A luxurious bus was waiting for those ranked 11th to 25th place. Lee Sejin grinned as he boarded the bus first, wanting to avoid having to sit next to him. I hung back a while before climbing on as well. Somebody followed right on my tail, hesitantly taking a seat beside me. I looked over to find Seon Ah-hyun next to me. Why are you sitting next to me? Not that it really mattered. He didn't try to make conversation, and I appreciated the moment of quiet. We arrived at the dormitories in no time at all. Just as it was in the previous season, we were assigned to different floors, again based on our rank. This pseudo-caste system would continue to be employed until the team missions began. 11th to 25th places were assigned large rooms that housed 5 people each. We were split into groups in order of our ranking, so I was assigned a different room to Lee Sejin, who was in 20th place. This was lucky for me. Damn, this is nice. I'm taking this bed. As soon as we entered the bedroom containing 2 bunk beds and a single, one of the other boys jumped on the single bed with a contrived-sounding cheerful shout. It seemed like he wanted to appear playful and happy on camera. I chose one of the bottom bunks. Then Seon Ah-hyun rushed forward and tossed his luggage on the bed above mine. He stared at the floor, avoiding my eyes when I stared. I feel like I suddenly have a second shadow. He continued to follow closely behind me, even after we were given sweatsuits to change into and told to assemble. It finally occurred to me that he probably found the bossy would-be celebs awkward to be around and preferred to stick to someone more ordinary and quiet like me. I left him be since I could see no problem with letting him hang around for now. However, I decided I would keep my distance and make sure we didn't end up on the same team. If someone took exception with him, his timid personality could end up causing problems for me. You will now begin your training for real. Welcome to the customized classes, cried the MC, dramatically introducing the system everyone was probably already familiar with. Based on the judges' evaluations, you've all been given a vocal and dance grade, correct? Yes. Each lesson is split into beginners, intermediate, and advanced levels. Based on your level, you will receive customized training designed to help you improve your skills. This system was no different from any other audition show. It was the next part that was the problem. In addition, you might be moved into a different class at any moment, without notice. The MC continued. It all depends on how much effort and dedication you put in. For example, if someone soaked up knowledge like a sponge in the intermediate vocal class and suddenly improved by leaps and bounds, they would be moved to the advanced vocal class in their next session. This also meant, of course, that someone could be sent to a lower class if they underperformed. This would go on for 10 days. Then we'd present the theme song as a solo performance, and our final rankings would be decided. In other words, the producers would work these kids like dogs to ensure the show's success. And these badges go to Park Moonday. Thank you. As expected, I received an advanced vocals badge and a beginner dance badge. I felt a bit silly with the shiny golden vocal badge and the dull bronze dance one pinned to my chest. They were so over the top that they verged on cheap. In addition, some contestants didn't receive a badge at all. The internet graciously referred to these unfortunate souls as the trash grade. Those without badges have not been assigned a grade yet, the MC said. They'll be joining the beginners' classes, but will also have to receive special lessons at night outside normal training hours. Frankly, if you were really determined, being in this position meant more time in front of the cameras and a more dramatic comeback storyline. I supposed it wouldn't feel that way if you were actually counted among their ranks, though. A good example of this was the former child actor who stood a ways away from me, hands trembling. I'd heard he'd been in a thriller movie that came out 10 years ago, a mega hit that was seen by 10 million people. He'd explained during the auditions that unfortunate circumstances had put his acting career on hold. He hadn't been assigned a grade for dancing, and his vocals were beginner's level at best. In his status window, I could see those same abilities were graded F&D respectively. He was probably hoping to get back into the acting game, rather than actually hoping to pursue a career as an idol. The thing that surprised me, though, was that his name was also Lee Sejin. I hadn't known that two people with the same name had appeared on the show, though it was obvious to me that the other Lee Sejin had been the one to debut. I didn't think that this Lee Sejin was the winner, and the reason was simple. He was no doubt being kept around to be cannon fodder. He used to stir drama in the early episodes, then abandoned. His displeasure at the situation was evident, as he was unable to rein in his feelings. The director will like that. After all the badges were handed out, a gigantic screen lit up. The song you will be practicing will now be revealed. For the next 10 days, you will put forth your best effort to master this song, then perform it for the shareholders of Idol Incorporated. This song was about to be played all over the country, to the extent that everyone would become absolutely sick of it. I'd been avoiding all media while I prepared for the civil service exam, but even I knew the song well, right down to the chorus's choreography. It wasn't as easy as Papa Khan, but still easy enough to pick up quickly. The song for this season is called Shining Star. An addictive beat suddenly began blasting from the speakers, accompanied by emotional but ultimately cringy lyrics. I'm standing on stage, and though you don't know it yet, the starlight pulsing inside of me is about to fly to you like a turbojet. A dancer appeared on stage, demonstrating the accompanying dance moves. Groans and the odd moan broke out around the room, and I too realized what the problem was. The chorus's relatively simple choreography was a red herring. It had intentionally been made simple in order to appeal to the general public. But the intro to the song was accompanied by a tangled mess of dance moves. By the time the first verse was over, I'd already forgotten everything I'd just seen. The song dove into the chorus. The one to shine on stage today is me. Yes, your shining star I'll be. I'm waking up with a radiant gleam. Watch me closely as I bring them to their knees. Even the seemingly easy chorus was accompanied by complicated footwork that would probably trip everyone up. I already knew what I had to do. Status window. I'll just have to forego sleep. Activate sleep is for the dead. The calories. I should have taken calories into account. That is, I should have known from the start that I'd be burning through way more calories than usual by practicing all night without sleep. After my first sleepless night, I could feel grouchiness creeping up on me because I was so hungry. Would you like to eat this? Seona Hyun had handed me a chocolate bar, and I'd conceded to having a short conversation with him out of sheer gratitude. We ended up deciding to drop formalities since he was the same age as Park Moon-dae. Speaking informally with a kid like him was a sharp reminder of just how young I now was. From the second day, I made sure to eat 3 meals a day and drink as much as possible. The food was fine, but I liked that we could eat as many portions as we wanted. After 9 days had passed, I had the entire dance memorized, from beginning to end. Being able to practice all night without any physical repercussions turned out to be really useful, and in addition, I'd gained a few levels. Name Park Moon-dae, Ryu Gunwoo. Level 7, title, None Singing, A. Dancing, D. Physical attractiveness, C. Plasma's charm, C. Traits, infinite potential, sleep is for the dead, D. Status abnormality, debut or die points remaining. 3. Luckily, every 100 or so attempts I received a reward, up to the 500 attempts mark at least. But I held off allocating my points just yet. If I used them now, they wouldn't have much impact. That's 5 people so far. 5 people had already been moved from the beginner's dance class to the intermediate class. It wasn't likely that anyone would dramatically improve after only a few days of training, so I could only assume that they'd botched their first screening and bounced back to their real level. Being included among them wouldn't help me to stand out, and it wasn't the proper way to take advantage of moving up a level. I had to ensure everyone noticed I'd improved, for maximum dramatic effect. There was already plenty of footage that could be used to serve that purpose since the choreographer had come down on me for my subpar dancing. Again! Your foot, bend the left foot. Did I tell you to swing your arm? Hold it straight up. The choreographer had exploded in thunderous rage on the very first day of class and verbally beaten all of us down to size, resulting in a dance practice that had only grown more depressing the longer it dragged on. As the class was drawing to a close, the choreographer had singled me out. Moon Day, yes. Keep this up, and you'll fail the next evaluation. I was most definitely not the worst performer in the class. I was in the beginner's class, after all, so I probably fell somewhere in the middle. In terms of ability, my dancing was as good as could be expected given I was relatively fit and trying my best. However, among the beginners, I had received the highest initial placement, and so there were certain expectations I had to meet relative to that. Predictably, the choreographer delivered a near identical line to one he had delivered the previous season. You know what I'm thinking? I'm wondering if I gave you the wrong ranking. It seems to me you didn't deserve to place that high in the first place. He was right, of course. He probably knew he was right, too. He was just hassling me for the camera's sake. Surely, you can do better. Get your act together. I will. Unless a person was blessed with natural talent, it wasn't reasonable to expect them to suddenly show huge improvement after only a few days of training. In my case, it was possible, though, so I just nodded with a determined expression painted across my face. Pointless criticism and advice meant nothing to me in reality, but this time it was useful since the audience would naturally assume I was upset by it. I had to wring the situation for as much drama as possible, so I'd have to wait. Thank you for the lesson, sir, the contestants cried, sweaty and out of breath. Don't mention it and don't give up, the choreographer responded with an easy nod. He glanced at the cameraman and, after confirming the cameras had been turned off, left the room, fiddling with his phone. The morning dance class had come to an end, and vocal classes would begin after lunch. We were given bulgogi and seaweed soup for lunch, and I ate as much as my stomach could hold. After a quick shower, I made my way to the advanced vocal class alone. There was one thing I had to admit. Why don't you show us how it's done, Moonday? The vocal coach asked. I hadn't put any effort at all into practicing my singing. Chapter 7. The trainer in charge of the advanced vocal class was the judge, Muty. She'd given me a generous rating after my first audition, and she'd been pretty positive in her comments for all the other contestants, too. Perhaps because of this, she tended to be rather gentle during training as well. That's not to say she never got angry, of course. Wangil, that's not it. Huh. The contestant responsible for getting the same part of the song wrong over and over again for the last 5 days in a row hung his head. It looked to me as if he was trying to hide his irritation rather than any feelings of shame, but ultimately that didn't matter. What did matter was that he'd made so many mistakes that even a coach as good-natured as Muty was having trouble concealing her frustration, and I knew what the root of the problem was. Moonday, will you sing this part for me, please? Of course. I stepped forward when she called me over, and she began to play the song on the keyboard. I sang the familiar pre-chorus segment, perfectly in time with the music. Thinking of the future, like a shooting star. The trainer nodded, pleased with my clean tone and precise rhythm, and the contestant she was in the process of scolding shifted his feet nervously. Indeed, the root of the problem was that I had been able to sing the theme song flawlessly right from the start. There was a nearly insurmountable gap between someone who already knew the song and someone who didn't. There was no getting around that. What was more, I hadn't only listened to the demo track, I had already heard the full release and could use what I remembered of it to my advantage. As it happened, my voice was also perfectly suited to the song. The vocal coach had been satisfied with my cleanly delivered vocals, and even now, Muty was gazing at me with a pleased smile. Some of the other contestants murmured among themselves, "That guy is seriously good." Yeah, this was the advanced class, meaning that the bar was higher. And since the best performing candidate currently was a normal guy with no notable previous training or company, the others were probably feeling pretty stressed right about now. This was especially the case, since the only thing I was good at was singing. After the first round of auditions, there were 2 contestants this season with A-grade vocals. Both of them were C rank or below in dancing. Because of this, no one was really standing out at the moment, myself included. And Choi Wangul, who was currently being called out for his lackluster singing, was one of the two A-rank vocalists. Ironically, he was the same middle schooler who'd struck up a conversation with me and summarily decided I wasn't worth being friends with. He was also a high school freshman, not a middle schooler. In any case, he was at the age where his ego was at its most inflated, so he was no doubt deeply upset by the endless criticism being piled on him. To make matters worse, he was also being compared to the guy he'd decided wasn't worth his time the moment he had met me. "That's exactly it," Muty exclaimed. As soon as the pre-chorus came to an end, the trainer bounced her fingers against the keys, deeply satisfied with my performance. Choi Wangul didn't look up even once. "Wangul, do you understand now how I want you to sing this part?" Based on his stats, I was surprised he was making so little progress. He'd been desperate to pick a fight with me, ever since I sang the whole song perfectly on the first day of training, and apparently he was completely coming apart at the seams now. If I remembered correctly, the first day had gone something like this. "Wow, you're getting so much good feedback for your singing, at least. You should really work your way up from the lower level dance class. You sing like an amateur. I think that makes your vocals sound cleaner, which is a perfect match for this song." He'd directed many a sneaky insult my way. The way he worded things made it so I'd have looked like a fool if I'd reacted angrily. And he'd also made sure to take his microphone off before saying any of it. But apparently, the petty insults hadn't been enough to satisfy his frustration. "You have such good luck. I envy you. Having good luck is one of the most important parts of succeeding in the entertainment industry, you know. It'd be great if you could channel that good luck into making yourself a better dancer, too. What a shame. Don't give up, though. I guess people with good luck have it better than hard workers. Everyone here is really desperate to do well, you know. You got here by accident, but you're getting pretty good feedback." He'd resorted to more blatant insults. He'd been harassing me openly by this point, and I'd started to feel a little uncomfortable just ignoring him. I didn't really have any other options, though, since I couldn't pretend to not know a song that I was already familiar with. And though you might not know it, my life is on the line here. "Calm down, take a deep breath, and take it slow," the trainer encouraged gently. "All right." Choi Wangil began to sing again with great concentration, only to repeat the same mistake. "That's too bad." The trainer piled praises on me until the class ended for the day, as usual, while Choi Wangil and a handful of the other contestants watched with vicious glares. It had been a while since I'd had to deal with such hostility directed my way. It was tiresome, but I didn't exactly hate the feeling. If I wasn't a threat to them, they wouldn't have bothered with me to begin with. The status quo continued just the same in both classes as I steadily gained more and more practice achievements. Before long, the last day of training arrived. On that day, the contestants in the advanced singing class spent the morning recording a song. Everyone sang together and no one was called on to perform a solo, so it probably wasn't all that important. I directed all my focus on the coming evening when the long-awaited grading evaluation would take place. The lights over the set turned on. "How is everyone?" "Oh, training was rough. It was really intense. I was so tired, I nearly overslept." "Because you were training the contestants?" "That's right. I hope we're able to see the results of our hard work today." The judges took their seats, exchanging small talk for the camera. They'd already met up in the lobby in the morning, but their current conversation was clearly meant to be used as the opening scene in a new episode. The set the judges had entered and taken seats around was arranged so they could interview the contestants. It was also the same one that had been used 2 seasons ago, and various special effects had been prepared to go off at certain times within it. The judges, who'd been told they should act overly surprised, were pretending like it was their first time seeing the set. This place, it feels like a really important interview should take place here. That's exactly what's happening, isn't it? This is the grading interview. We'll be interviewing the potential recruits for Idol Incorporated today? As soon as the judges finished speaking, the desk in front of them lit up. Oh, wow. There was a fancy sign decorating the front side of the desk that read, in cursive lettering, "Shine Your Star." Seeing the season's catchphrase, The judges began to applaud, just as their predecessors had in previous seasons. However, this time there was a surprising twist and the wall began to move. Wow! What in the world? The judges were professional entertainers through and through, so they immediately began reacting loudly as one wall sank into the floor, revealing the wide space that made up the rest of the set. The MC's voice rang out from behind the judges as they stared around, expressions of fake wonder plastered across their faces. Welcome to the new and improved Idol Incorporated. Relisted. The first challenge our contestants will face is a public evaluation. Wow. Behind the judges was a seating area made up of bleachers meant for the live audience. The seats below these bleachers were occupied by the contestants. As the MC continued to explain what was going on, the gathered Idol hopefuls were horrified to learn in real time that the seating wasn't only temporary. The 77 contestants have all prepared the same song. In today's evaluation, they will be performing in front of each other. Everyone had been able to see each other's performances during the first round of auditions as well. But apparently, no one had guessed that they'd have to perform for their competition in the second round. The very people who'd practiced the same song over the same time period. Their stiff, unhappy expressions said as much. The evaluations had been done privately in the previous seasons, held in a smaller studio. Contestants will undertake their grading evaluation in ranking order, but in reverse. Chu Sungu, in 77th place. Please step forward. The contestant who'd been named staggered toward the stage with the air of an already defeated man. He received many pitying glances and soft murmurs followed in his wake, but Park Moon-dae remained silent. Just as had been the case during Seon Ah-hyun's first audition, he was fully aware that pity could come across as arrogance depending on how the footage was edited. He'd developed an instinct for these things during all the time he'd spent in online fan communities trying to determine the right price to sell his fan cams for. Okay, you put in a lot of effort. Thank you. As was to be expected, the contestant in 77th place couldn't even sing most of the first verse and completely failed his evaluation. The same cold and uneasy atmosphere hung over the studio during the next contestant's performance and the one after that, both of them bungling the song entirely. After 5 or 6 more performances proceeded in the same way, even the judges were beginning to look uncomfortable. Starting with the weakest contestants was cruel, but the production team had nothing to lose. If they're never going to become idol material, the staff want to get some entertainment out of them, at least to get their money's worth for the wage they're paying. The failures would be abandoned once they'd served their purpose. At the same time, anyone who had what it took to hang on despite the harrowing ordeal would stand out from the crowd. The same went for anyone who showed significant growth after such a short period of time. The production staff had probably decided that any contestant that wasn't particularly talented was no doubt on the show because they were either extremely handsome or otherwise famous. They hadn't been cast for their skills, which meant that going first ultimately wouldn't make much of a difference to them. Interestingly, there was one contestant who exemplified both of these characteristics. Contestant Lee Se-jin. We can see you put in a lot of effort. Well done. Thank you, replied Lee Se-jin, the former child actor. Though he was out of breath and red in the face, he'd completed the song all the way to the end. His performance had been lackluster, and certainly couldn't be considered well executed. But he looked positively skilled compared to the contestants who'd come before him, all of whom had been disasters. Park Moon-dae wondered briefly if it was this Lee Se-jin who ended up debuting. It was hard to know, and he dismissed the thought for later, deciding to keep an eye on the guy. I need to stay away from the future drug addict, whomever it may be. And then came the boring performances from the mid-ranked contestants. They grew increasingly and steadily more talented, and there were even a few standout performances. However, it would be unreasonable to expect that hearing the same song over and over again wouldn't quickly grow tedious. After the hot mess that was the lowest-ranked contestants, most of the young men performed well enough, which meant the judges were quickly growing bored. Not bad. Their disinterest was at an all-time high when it came time for Park Moon-dae to take the stage. Seo-na-hyun held his fist for Park Moon-dae to bump in encouragement, his pale face expressionless. He'd performed for the judges just moments ago and done an okay job of it. Good luck. Moon-dae paused, confused. Okay. Why is he acting so friendly all of a sudden? Puzzled, he returned the greeting all the same. His need to look friendly had won out. Trudging on stage, he was filled with excitement, a strange, unfamiliar sensation. Park Moon-dae in 22nd place. Yes. The judges wore weary expressions. He sings well, but his dancing is terrible. The choreographer, who had zero expectations for Park Moon-dae's performance after the disastrous practice sessions from the last few days, thought to himself gruffly, I'm getting sick of this. Let the evaluation begin, the MC called. The by now tedious intro to the song began to play again, and Park Moon-dae launched into the first move, which required him to pull in both arms as he spun. It was the choreographer who noticed something odd was happening before anyone else. His movements are different. In the final class held only 2 days ago, Park Moon-dae's dancing had still been a clunky mess. Dancing required fine motor control, a precise sense of when to tense and when to relax one's body. That was what set real dancers apart from amateurs. And Park Moon-dae had definitely been the latter. Or at least, that was what the choreographer had thought. Why is he suddenly so good? Chapter 8. Strictly speaking, Park Moon-dae's dancing wasn't anything special. He was a good enough dancer that he wouldn't stand out like a sore thumb in a group dance, and that was about the extent of his abilities. However, put differently, this meant he could put on a performance that was good enough to be included in a group dance in the first place. Even if this is just his debut performance. He could probably match, if not outdo, every other person here in terms of skill. He was showing incredible improvement. The choreographer felt himself growing excited in the face of such a surprising development. But he forced himself to remain calm. He wasn't this good 2 days ago. He can't have improved in a meaningful way in that time. If Moon-dae was smart about this, he'd probably put the most effort into making the best possible impression at the very beginning of the song. He'll go back to his clumsy execution soon enough. But he didn't. Park Moon-dae continued to dance at the same level even as he entered the chorus. In fact, he only seemed to get a better grasp of the tempo in the chorus, and his arm and leg movements didn't flounder in the extremities, as was typical of the beginner-level contestants. His dancing was accurate and stable, not some sloppy mishmash of moving parts. The one to shine on stage today? I'll be. He was singing all of the lyrics as well, not skipping or skimming over any part. His technique could use a little refining, but he didn't get a single note wrong and gave a clean, pleasant vocal performance. Muti tapped the beat of the song on the desk cheerfully with her pen, where she sat next to the choreographer. She seemed unaware of her own actions, but that was probably a testament to how much she was enjoying the performance. Even to the choreographer's untrained ears, Park Moon-dae's singing was the best they'd heard so far. Watch me closely as I bring them to their knees. His singing was excellent. He was pronouncing the lyrics clearly and audibly. I wonder how much effort he had to put into keeping up with the dance while singing in such a steady voice. The choreographer found himself feeling a warm fondness for the boy. He treated people with skill, promise, and potential very differently from how he treated those without. In his mind, Park Moon-dae had just earned himself a considerable amount of goodwill, which had certainly not been the case before thanks to his obvious lack of dancing talent. Maybe he looked like he was struggling to learn the moves because he was focused on keeping his singing steady. His strong suit is his voice, after all. But the choreographer still had his doubts. It's hard to get this good after only a couple of days with no decisive reason why. Park Moon-dae finished the second verse without losing the beat or any volume or power in his voice. The judges were silent. The choreographer, setting his puzzlement aside, suddenly felt overwhelmed with a positive emotion, admiration. Thank you, Park Moon-dae replied, red in the face and gasping for breath. He had obviously given his all to finish the song powerfully. There was a passionate sparkle in his eyes, in contrast to the almost arrogant attitude he'd adopted during the first audition, when he'd gone ahead with his bold song choice without so much as a twitch in his expression. It made it obvious to anyone watching just how hard he'd worked. The improvement was so incredible, it was sure to seize the hearts of the audience. Muti already looked poised and ready to shower Moonday with compliments. The choreographer guessed that the other judges felt similarly, though their reactions might not be as emphatic. However, there was no one better positioned than him to work this scene to the show's advantage. He was the one who'd drilled Moonday for the last 10 days in the dance practice room. For this reason, the choreographer ignored the production team as they indicated to him that Youngren should be allowed to give her critics first. He spoke into the microphone. "Moonday!" "Yes!" Moonday panted, still out of breath. "Well done." There wasn't anything more that needed to be said. Park Moonday grinned instead of responding. It was a confident smile that bordered on playful and strange to see on his face since he had been largely unmoved by anything for the last 10 days. Nothing beat a quality plot twist, and nowhere was this formula more effective than on an idol audition show. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might explode right out of my chest as I struggled to suck enough air into my lungs, but I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The judges' responses were favorable. My goodness, that was amazing. Moonday, your performance was perfect today. Excellent. I felt like I'd taken a large step away from my inevitable doom. I knew it. I was right to put all 3 of the points I collected into dancing. My dancing grade was now C. The level increase, frankly, had a more noticeable effect on my dancing than it did on my singing. Things I'd only been capable of doing in my head, I was suddenly capable of doing with my body, and I could feel new muscles moving and flexing as I danced. The experience was euphoric. At this point, I could probably keep up with the contestants in the intermediate classes at least, even if I hadn't quite reached the advanced level just yet. I'd spent an entire week memorizing the choreography without getting even a wink of sleep, so I knew the moves inside and out. With this song, at least, I could hold my own in the intermediate class, and I only showed how much I was able to improve at the very last minute. Unless they chose to edit all my footage out for some reason, this should definitely be enough to ensure that I wouldn't be eliminated in the first wave of disqualifications. It felt like I was slowly but surely making progress towards surviving this. The questions I'd been expecting to hear came next. "Moonday, what have you been doing for the last 2 days?" the choreographer asked. I could see Judge Muti mouthing "Why?" at him. The choreographer explained, "You're suddenly a competent dancer? And it somehow happened in the 2 days since we last met." "Well," I started, finally catching my breath and purposefully tidying my hair a little bashfully. I no doubt looked embarrassed. I asked my friend to help me out since he's a more talented dancer than me. A talented dancer? Seon Ah-hyun. I was casting a smokescreen over the truth, in a way. I couldn't very well tell them that I'd used the status window to level up, so I chose to weave a touching backstory instead. As it happened, Seon Ah-hyun, who was in the advanced dancing class, was my roommate. It was sometimes the case that getting advice from a peer resulted in marked improvement. So I was trying my luck at using this as an excuse. "Do you have a moment?" Me? Are you talking to me?" "Yeah, I was wondering if you could show me how to do this move. If you have time." Oh, sure thing." "Okay." Seon Ah-hyun had perked up when I'd asked him for help and immediately began teaching me the steps so passionately that I would have felt bad if I hadn't shown any improvement. I'd been a bit taken aback by how eager he was since he spent nearly 2 hours explaining them every move in detail. I only asked him so no one could poke holes in my story. In any case, it would probably do Seon Ah-hyun some good to be seen as the guy who'd gone out of his way to help a clumsy amateur dancer like me. It's a win-win situation. I decided to sweeten the pot a little and throw in some unnecessary details. Ah-hyun is very friendly. "Hey, are you saying that I'm not?" the choreographer complained. There was a grin on his face, though. It seemed like I'd handled the question quite well. A warm, touching mood had fallen over the room. "Do you remember what I told you during your first audition?" asked Youngren of Saint Yu in a gentle voice. I had the feeling this was a rhetorical question. Smiling faintly, she continued, I said that since you had no experience with dancing, future missions might be difficult for you to handle. It seems I was wrong. Park Moon Day, I believe you've got what it takes to endure everything this competition throws at you. Thank you. Thank you for your performance today. Hopefully your dancing will be a little more relaxed and natural next time. I'll do my best. Their comments didn't mean I was going to take it easy in the next round, but on an audition show, you had to be armed with a willing attitude at all times. That was pretty fun. In any case, my plan had been successful. As the judges went on to deliver an overwhelmingly positive review of my performance, I concluded that I was likely to receive a gold grade. As was the case for many Idol audition shows, Idol Incorporated revealed its theme song to the public before anything else aired. Those who got the most amount of screen time in the theme song were, of course, the most skilled of the contestants. And it was the grades assigned in this round that determined who would be considered skilled. One might easily guess that the gold, silver, and bronze grades corresponded with the advanced, intermediate, and beginner classes, respectively. Any contestants who rank lower than bronze will be eliminated. They said the same thing every season, but it had never actually happened. Therefore, it was usually safe to ignore the warning. There was one grade that ranked higher than gold. Idol Incorporated has returned with its new and improved season, Relisted. Who will take the top spot and receive the platinum grade this time? The platinum grade. People on the internet had promptly turned the grade into a meme, comparing it to everything from multi-level marketing scams to multiplayer games that were infamous for their toxic communities. Frankly, I was just relieved that the production team hadn't gone so far as to call it the diamond grade. Regardless of how I felt about it, the other contestants were waiting with bated breath for the MC to announce the results. A fancy metal box had been placed in front of every contestant, and inside each was a badge that would reveal the grade given to them by the judges. I wasn't very nervous since I already had a good idea of what mine was. 26th place and beyond was silver, and a quick glance at the various status windows around me told me that I was currently in the top 25. I wasn't good enough for the platinum grade, which was given to the top 10. That meant that I would be gold. Contestants, please open your boxes. I wore a solemn expression to hide my boredom and flipped the lid open. I froze. Inside the box was a glittering badge with a hologram finish. I was platinum grade, not gold. Seeing that I was frozen in shock, Seon Ae-yoon glanced down as he lifted his own gold badge from its box. He jolted upon seeing my badge. Whoa, huh? No way. Wow, that's amazing. Lee Sejin, formerly in 20th place, also held a golden badge in his fist and screamed when he saw what lay inside my box. He slapped me on the back. Wow, you're something else. Platinum, huh? Since when were we this friendly with each other? The most we'd done was say hello in the corridor. I didn't react to his sudden enthusiasm, however, since he'd been the one to start making comments unsolicited. Taking a deep breath, I picked up the badge. It probably looked to the other contestants as if I was emotional about the high rank. But in truth, I was confused. Why am I platinum? I knew that 2 or 3 contestants in every season were usually awarded the platinum grade because of their growth instead of for their actual skill level, but I hadn't thought I'd made that much of an impression. Then I realized what had happened. The grade evaluation order. Since everyone had already been evaluated and sorted into grades, it probably meant very few people were able to make their way up from the lower and middle rankings, making my skill boost more noticeable. I'd memorized this specific dance by practicing every night, and that, paired with my prior knowledge of the song thanks to my past life, meant my performance was superior to those with similar stats. I turned the badge over in my hand. I'd made a strong impression, that much was obvious, but for some reason it left an unpleasant taste in my mouth. There will be hell to pay if I mess up now. If I made even the smallest mistake during the next evaluation, there was no knowing how I'd come out in the edit. A contestant in the first season had fallen victim to the same fate. In fact, I didn't think I'd have to wait until the next evaluation. If anything was even slightly off in how the footage of me receiving the platinum grade was edited together, I was screwed. Choi Wongle was glaring at me from a few paces away, and he'd instantly set me up for a fall if he said something like, "Frankly, I don't get why he got that grade," in an interview. It would be extremely unwise of me to let on that I wasn't entirely pleased, though. Can't be helped, I guess. I slowly took the badge and pinned it to my shirt. Turning around, I took note of which contestants had received platinum badges. As expected, the guys who'd placed first and second in the first round of auditions had both been given platinum badges. In addition, those who had been sitting on the comfy sofas all got platinum grades for the most part. It seems some of the contestants from after 10th place had managed to force their way up, while the rest remained in the gold grade. The only person formerly lower than 20th place was me. Sigh, I have a target on my back. But no, I should look on the bright side. Ranking high was good, after all. At least I'll get plenty of screen time. Until fan cams started making the rounds online, it was a battle for who could get the most screen time. At least I was safe from being disqualified early on, that was for certain. I was making decent progress toward my goal to debut within a year. All I have to do is avoid coming off as crazy unlikable. I resolved to do everything I could to avoid people finding reasons to dislike me. I'd level up and put all my points into dancing and singing. Please come up to the stage, everyone, starting with those in platinum grade. And for now, when it came time to perform the theme song, I would do my best to avoid ending up next to anyone with an A in dancing. I had nothing to gain, and a whole lot to lose, from being compared like that. Chapter 9. The choreography for the theme song had the contestants arranged in a fan shape, those with a platinum badge in the center. As one might expect, the higher your grade, the closer to the center you were. Other than that, the only special treatment one got for being in the platinum grade was a solo portion of the song. However, a single good shot could have a huge impact on the rankings this early in the game, so everyone was pretty sensitive about their grade. The production team and the trainers constantly reiterated the importance of the grades, creating an atmosphere where it was very easy for the young contestants to be swept up in all the hype. All of this is to say that I was being approached by the other boys 5 times more than usual since getting my platinum badge. It left a bad taste in my mouth. This kind of social climbing was something I hadn't even experienced in high school. The production team had deliberately crafted this atmosphere, and I wondered what they were planning next. Thankfully, even the wicked producers paid close attention to how things looked on screen. Among the platinum contestants, those who were A grade or higher in dance were closer to the front at the start of the performance and during dance breaks. The contestants who were not as good at dancing were strategically placed toward the back. This was, of course, the case for me. The routine had been arranged so that I was positioned behind the gold grades during the dance breaks. I was right next to Siona Hyun and Lee Se-jin, who had been assigned a gold grade. The child actor Lee Se-jin had been given silver. The way things were going, I was seriously beginning to wonder if this other Lee Se-jin was actually the one who had debuted. Aren't you a bit disappointed? As a result, I tried to keep interactions limited with the overly friendly gold grade Lee Se-jin. I'd lowered my guard without meaning to when I'd thought that he might not really be the one to debut. Not really, I replied calmly. He was referring to my position on stage, which was less than ideal considering I was ranked platinum. Whoa, really? I would have been really disappointed. That would be understandable in your case. Yeah, why do you think so? He asked. You're good at dancing. Lee Se-jin was an 8 in dancing, according to his stat window. His vocals were C+, and if he hadn't sung the high notes out of tune during his evaluation, he might have been the one to receive the platinum badge instead of me. Thanks, Lee Se-jin said with a grin, pleased at the praise. Another voice suddenly interjected, You can't dance? It was the platinum grade contestant standing at the front of the formation, smack in the center. His questioning expression was innocent and lacked any ill intent. But the problem was that he had nabbed first place after the very first round of auditions. I was also pretty sure this guy ended up winning the show in my original timeline. His name was Cha Eugene, so famous that I'd seen him a few times on TV at the restaurant I'd often eat at while studying in Gozechan District, a neighborhood populated largely by civil service examinees. He was a bit of a weirdo, contrary to my expectations. Was he seriously asking me if I couldn't dance while his microphone was on and the cameras were running? It was surprising he'd managed to win with such a blunt personality. His stats were excellent, of course, and he'd stood out in every evaluation so far, without exception. That meant it was likely that the editors had favored him. I shouldn't get into this with him. I grinned. You didn't see my performance? His expression took on a guilty quality. He seemed to be the sort of guy who felt bad for small missteps like this, which was also surprising to me. We were all so focused on getting ready for our own performances. I wasn't watching everyone else that closely. Next time you can see my dancing and judge for yourself. Sounds good. Cha Eugene nodded and turned his attention back toward the front. Li Sejin laughed, looking taken aback. He has a unique way of speaking, doesn't he? Maybe it's because he's been living overseas? Seems so, I said. Li Sejin left the conversation at that, no doubt aware of the cameras trained on him. I gazed down at the staff milling around in front of the stage. It seemed as if everything was finally in order. Rehearsal will begin soon, one of them shouted. I'd been correct, they were done setting things up. I withheld a sigh. It had been hard enough lugging around equipment and waiting on the street during my time filming idols. Who knew I'd end up on the other side of the camera? It was 6 in the morning, and we'd be filming the main performance at 4 in the afternoon. It was going to be a long, hard day. At 8 o'clock that evening, we finally finished filming. Good work, everyone! As I'd anticipated, it had been a hellish experience. Ugh, oh God, I feel sick. The contestants flopped to the floor all around me, groaning with fatigue. Everyone was soaked in sweat. I was no different, but all the other guys had already sprawled themselves all over the stage floor, so there was no room for me to even sit. It was kind of funny. I was completely exhausted. The rehearsal lasted all morning until we were all weak in the knees. Only after rehearsal was over did we finally get a break for lunch. Apparently, the production team hadn't been able to secure any food-related sponsorships, since all we got was kimbap wrapped in aluminum foil. The stylists and various other staff had rushed onto the set as soon as we were done. We really need more storage space around here. Tilt your head this way, please. Let's get this over with quickly. They complained about the less than ideal working conditions in the large, open area we were using as a dressing room, as they worked with the efficiency of machines, applying makeup to all the contestants, and touching up their hair. Frankly, no one underwent all that dramatic of a transformation, but we all looked presentable enough for TV. After that, we all got dressed in our stage outfits. Then a camera appeared in front of me. Do you like the clothes? Yes. What sort of idiot would just come out and say they hated the costumes? What do you like about them? The design looks like a mix between a soldier's and school uniforms. I think it's pretty versatile. Too bad I can't tell them I find it kind of tidy that all 77 of us are wearing the same thing, like little kids. As soon as I was done, the other contestants around me jumped in. I love that we can mix and match accessories since the outfits go with a lot of different styles. Ah, it goes really well with the badge. At most, they'd only get a few seconds of screen time, but I had to give them credit for being so eager. Next was the actual recording of the performance. Frankly, I had no idea how the final footage would come out. Let's go again. Ugh, I didn't have it in me to worry about it while all of us were made to dance the same routine more than 30 times over, all in a studio so hot, it's a wonder no one had gotten heat stroke. I vaguely remembered receiving compliments, critiques, and at one point someone delivering some sort of pep talk aimed at rousing an emotional response from the viewers. But overall, it was just a hazy mess. I couldn't remember much, and there was no knowing what footage from the 30 different takes the production team would end up using. Trying my best to gather myself, I listened as the producer, or PD as he was mostly referred to, spoke to us. You've really done well, everyone. The main PD, who'd appeared for the first time just as the filming was coming to an end, handed out a few useless compliments, then finally delivered some actually useful information. This recording will air next Friday on the Music Bomb Show. You'll start filming again the day after that. Rest up until then, but remember that this is a great opportunity for you to get in more practice. Make the most of it. He made it sound like hard work was all we'd need. The contestants cheered, though, as the PD implied that the possibilities were endless if we were willing to put in the effort. "Let's work our butts off," the director cried. "Let's do it. See you next week. Great work, everyone." "Thank you very much." Everyone summoned the last of their energy to cheer and clap. I clapped as well, though my hands shook from exhaustion. I'd have to work on my stamina before the broadcast of Music Bomb next week. The week went by in a flash. My plan to work on increasing my stamina was only half successful since I developed a fever immediately after the filming ended and was stuck resting in bed for 3 days. Park Moonday's body hadn't been able to handle several weeks of intense physical activity. In any case, after recovering for 3 days, I stubbornly increased the portions I ate during mealtimes. I also began weight training and practicing my dancing. Even now, as I watched the Music Bomb broadcast, I had a dumbbell in my hand. I had to give myself some credit. Surely all that qualified as working hard. Sivan Sol, who has just returned to the stage with an exciting EDM track. Did you enjoy it? Of course. I'm always hyped for a fresh EDM track. I didn't know you were a fan of EDM, Sivan. Ooh! Ooh! A pair of idols were over-enthusiastically on the screen. They seemed to be reading off teleprompters, but were still doing a pretty good job of pulling off the cringy, poorly written script. Despite their no doubt extremely busy schedules, they were giving it their best effort. Sivan, should we introduce the next amazing performance? Yes, let's. Did you hear the news, Yunjae? What news would that be? It's the news that all the shareholders have been waiting for. Idol Incorporated has been relisted. Yay! It's going to begin soon. I put down the dumbbell and found my phone, opening up the website I'd already logged into in preparation. It was a viewer message board hosted on a huge internet portal, and it was the best place to gauge the general public's reactions. Because no big-name singers were making a comeback this week, the page was filled with talk about Idol Incorporated, Music Bomb, Talk. Relisted? LOL, are they serious? They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel, aren't they? Wow, Season 3 of a total hot mess? ROFL relisted? More like delisted. The hell? What's all this ruckus about? A new season of Idol Inc. has been announced. Oh, am I the only one who came to see the comments instead of the actual performance? As expected, the reactions were a mixed bag. Every time I hit the refresh button, a fresh round of jokes appeared, made at the show's expense. It seemed many of the people commenting weren't even the usual audience of Music Bomb. In a concise summary of their reactions went something like this. The production staff was in over their heads, and Season 3 was doomed. Season 2 had been such a train wreck that everyone seemed to think the series had no hope of ever reviving itself. As expected, I saw a few jeering comments referencing Season 2. So, it's all guys this time? Do I sense gay romance on the horizon? Gay marriage isn't legal in Korea, remember? I don't see this season possibly making a bigger impression than Season 2. Fuck, LOL. This was the main reason that Season 2 had been such an unmitigated disaster. They'd allowed contestants of both genders to audition, which was completely unheard of in a program that was meant to produce an idol group. It had certainly been an odd idea. I wondered what the production team had been thinking. If Season 2 had been an all-boys audition, as was the standard, they wouldn't have failed the way they had. Even another all-girls audition would have been preferable. The fiasco I was referring to was this. Who knows? Some girl might get pregnant again and rewrite the history of idol audition shows once more. LOL. 2 seasons in a row, huh? We're laughing about it now. But fuck me if the first time didn't already traumatize me enough. What were those assholes thinking? Showing up on TV and stirring up shit like that? Okay, you're taking this way too seriously. Awkward. It's just a TV show, buddy. Cool it. No, it's not just a TV show. It's a money-hungry audition program. It still makes me angry thinking about how the show did their best to paint it as the romance of the century. Ha ha, yes. A girl had fallen pregnant while on the show. Even a normal romance would have been fatal, but someone had actually gotten pregnant. And it had been one of the contestants, too. The bigger issue had been that the two contestants involved were some of the most popular members on the show. The production team had apparently decided they'd capitalize on the situation by generating a scandal. It was a mixed gender season anyway, and dropped the two at the last moment. That was why they jumped through hoops, using their remaining screen time to make it seem like the two of them were on a romantic dating show or something. That hadn't been all, though. He was even cheating on her. I don't think I'll ever see his equal in pure audacity. Idol Inc. is legendary, though not for the right reasons. The boy who'd gotten the girl pregnant had been cheating on her with another girl. This other girl had been meaning to keep silent for the sake of her career, but the romantic subplot the producers had been pushing had driven her up the wall, and she'd sent screenshots of her text conversations with him to a news agency. After that, things got, well, even worse. The story had flooded search engine rankings, celebrity news pages, and social media. Inevitably, Season 2 never reached the finale and instead closed up shop early. And as long as the audience still remembered the monumental scandal, the new season was never going to avoid its fair share of mockery, especially early on. Setting that train of thought aside, I turned my attention to the screen again. Oblivious to the chaotic mess unfolding in the comments, the Music Bomb MCs were still smiling widely. There's plenty of idol stocks waiting for shareholders to invest in. Shine your star. There was that famous catchphrase again. Invest now in the idol you think will skyrocket to the top. The comments began to flood in at a furious speed. The stocks will rocket to the moon and never come back. This was a popular meme from seasons past. As I understood, it was usually used when a promising contestant was toppled thanks to malicious editing. The comments were moving so fast that they were hard to read, and there were a few consistent complaints among them. Wow, the same catchphrase again? I wonder who came up with that. They should be fired. Yeah, sounds like a boomer was trying their best to sound hip. You idiots at the broadcast station. Don't make Siwan say lines that are so lame TT. I grinned. Seems like people are still watching it, though. They were watching so they could talk trash about the show, but that was oftentimes preferable to complete indifference. These viewers and their comments were sure to generate some buzz. I'd already watched as Season 3 succeeded with flying colors after all. Most of the viewers, watching from the beginning, once the finals were underway, were sure to grow attached to at least one of the remaining contestants. By then, they were loyal viewers, whether they liked the results or not. This wouldn't be the case from the get-go, though. I wondered what the audience's reaction would be next. As soon as the MCs were done, a stage appeared on screen. Youngren was standing on it, the spotlight washing over her and painting dramatic shadows over the attractive angles of her face. Idol Incorporated had always been met with black comedy and plenty of memes that kept the viewers amused. After all the backlash it had gotten following the second season, though, they were apparently attempting to change their image up a little. Maybe they're going for a more serious approach this time? Shareholders. Do you remember the previous season's delisting? My short-lived assumption was proven immediately wrong as soon as Youngren opened her mouth. Please accept my apology for turning your stocks into worthless scraps of paper. As Youngren's ringing voice came through the speakers, huge captions appeared on the screen. This is an apology from the production team. Please don't blame Youngren. And we are still accepting requests for refunds on our website. As I sat there, speechless, I couldn't help but wonder if they'd well and truly lost their minds. Chapter 10. They hadn't mentioned the last season even once during filming so far. I hadn't dreamed that they would drop this bomb now. The comments were inundated with question marks. Youngren continued without so much as batting an eyelid. In order to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again, going forward the production team will leave all decisions to the shareholders. A row of powerful lights flared to life as Youngren uttered each new sentence. The group composition You decide. The number of contestants in each group? You decide that too. Are there contestants you want to see perform together? The choice is yours. Or the lights began to blink precariously. Is there a member in the group you want gone? Kick them out! Has the production team gone insane? I saw a comment that summed up the appropriate response to this perfectly. Youngren wrapped up her speech, still wearing a grave expression as the lights flashed dramatically around her. The very existence of our company depends on you, our shareholders. Idol Incorporated will be relisted, starting now. The camera angle changed, revealing shining lights rippling on a stage shaped like a star. 10 people were standing in the center of the stage with their backs to the camera, the platinum-grade contestants. The camera circled around them, moving up and down as it zoomed in. However, the stage was so large that by the end of the shot, the frame still captured all 10 figures. As soon as the camera stopped, the intro to the song began to play, and the contestants spun one by one to face the front, all movements diligently caught by the camera. The prize for earning a platinum grade was a solo shot at the beginning of the performance, but each person got less than a second on screen, bringing the worth of the reward into question. They should have just picked one person like they did in the original season. A strange feeling washed over me as I saw my face appear for a split second on the screen. I'd been the one to perform, but it still felt awkward seeing Park Moonday's face instead of my own. But maybe seeing a different person's face will give me less secondhand embarrassment. When the intro ended and the song began, the gold grade contestants appeared around the platinum contestants. Through the magic of editing, the many times we'd filmed the song over and over had been cut together naturally. By the time the pre-chorus began, the silver grade contestants had smoothly appeared on both sides, followed by the bronze in the back as the chorus began. Then came the group chorus. Nice. It hadn't come out half bad. Everyone looked like they were moving in perfect synchronization, since any mistakes or clumsiness had been wondrously edited out. I could see some positive responses among the comments, though most people seemed confused that they were enjoying what they were seeing. Wait, why is the song actually good? It may be a shit show, but the theme songs are always bangers. This song is so wasted on the show. They should have given it to an actual idol TT. The commenters also missed no opportunity to pass judgment on the contestants whenever there was a close-up. Do you see the state of his skin? Man, that's so awkward. He just accidentally hit himself. Hilarious. Anyone see it? Can't expect talent from people so hideous. LOL, please stop the generalizing or you're hurting the ugly people in this thread. Sorry, their dancing is okay, but they're not handsome enough to pull it off. Damn it, you son of a bitch, LMAO. Of course, the comments weren't all bad. Wow, that one was really good looking. Whoa, what is he doing on this show? How did they get that guy to agree to do this? If I was that good looking, I wouldn't be wasting my time on this stupid show. This was how the people generally reacted to anyone with a B grade or higher in physical attractiveness. Whoa, that was a close-up of Seon Ah-hyun just now. The camera seemed attracted to the most handsome competitors. Wait a second. I watched the comments as close-ups were shown of the contestants. Did I mess up? It was bad news if there was too little buzz about me. Dancing and singing aside, maybe I should have worked my physical attractiveness up to an A first. For those who were good-looking enough, a single close-up during the theme song performance was enough to spark interest. If I was able to attract a few curious fan site masters, they would go on to take photos of me during press conferences and the like, and they would then circulate on social media. I could have locked down an initial fan base, attracted by my visuals, and I'd be safe from an early disqualification. Since I had the status window, I could have slowly built up my skills later. I'd thought better of that strategy since this season was inevitably going to be a laughingstock at first and would only gain popularity at a later date. But I'd forgotten that people could take an interest in my looks, if only to mock them. Feeling an icy chill settling in the pit of my stomach, I turned back to the screen. The song had come to an end, finishing with several close-ups. The most eye-catching contestant in these final shots was the child actor Lisa Jean. The camera lingered on him for several seconds, making it obvious that the production team really wanted the rumor mill to focus on him. Thinking about it, most of the members I remember successfully debuting, in the end, had been a B or higher in physical attractiveness. It boded badly for me if the final edits were only focusing on the best-looking contestants. Park Moonday was far from ugly, but he wasn't anything special either. Feeling my confidence slipping away, I decided I needed to reconsider my strategy, but movement on the TV caught my attention. It was a mid-program ad. I heard a familiar voice. Idol Incorporated relisted. The first ad is airing right now? It made sense that they'd had time to make it since it had been over a week since the first shoot. I focused on the TV, wondering if I could gather any hints about what direction they were going to take the show in. I hope there are lots of promising contestants. I'm really looking forward to it. Wait, beep. Is on this season too? The contestants will have their work cut out for them. The judges were laughing and conversing on the screen. The ad was already incorporating every possible cliché typical of a reality show trailer. There was a montage of contestants receiving positive feedback from the judges. Wow, what can I say? That was incredible. You are truly gifted. Whoa, where have you been all my life? A snippet of my evaluation also played. I breathed a sigh of relief, less concerned that I'd be edited out entirely. I'd been highly stressed since this was my first appearance to the public. Even if first impressions were the most important, there was usually plenty of leeway up until around episode 4. I just have to keep calm and tweak my strategy. In contrast to the inner peace I had managed to reach, the judges were now berating someone on screen. That just now, that wasn't even worthy of being called an actual performance. You know you're just making excuses, right? It's as simple as this. You didn't prepare enough. You should be ashamed of yourself. There were several shots of contestants wearing stiff, grim expressions and biting their lips. Looking at the background, I knew that these clips were actually taken in the practice rooms, and they were all actually just exhausted from practicing. There was even a scene that had been edited in such a way that made it seem like something dramatic was going down, by beeping out key phrases and names. Beep, wait, beep, stay where you are. The contestant suddenly decides to leave. A close-up shot of a teary-eyed Lee Sajan, the child actor, appeared on the screen. What is the story behind his tears? The screen went dark, and the show's logo faded in dramatically. A variation of the theme song played, and the logo suddenly vanished. The MC's voice could be heard. The new and improved relisted season of Idol Incorporated. The first hurdle will be... Beep! Evaluation! Oh, God! The trailer came to an end with a clip of the contestants covering their mouths, expressions deeply shocked. Glancing down, I found that the comments section was understandably on fire. That evening, every celebrity news site exploded with comments about the new season. After I finished working out, I logged into the web portal site as I was heating up some dinner. The articles on the front page all had titles that went something like this: Idol Incorporated offers apology to shareholders and unveils new variation on formula. Male idols. Idol Incorporated. Relisted season unveiled, shining star shown for the first time. Please invest in us, shareholders. The 77 contestants from the new season show what they can do. The titles themselves were pretty neutral, but the reactions to the articles were a good gauge of public opinion. The comment sections on most celebrity news sites had been disabled for a while now, so the only indication of how their readership was responding was through the use of emoticons. The unbelievable emoticon had garnered over 12,000 clicks. It was clear people had clicked this since there was no I'm angry emoticon, which meant the public was getting pretty worked up. Many people had written opinion pieces that were published through various news outlets as well. Why Idol Incorporated is hiding a vulgar underbelly behind a false promise of freedom. Kids have become stocks. Buy me, please. I clicked one of these. This isn't idle hopefuls just politely asking to be chosen anymore. The program demands that viewers buy stocks in their idols, meaning the contestants are no longer even being treated like human beings. The cruelty in leaving their fates to the public like this is, I don't need to read any more of that. Most posts I found across the various internet communities and on social media were negative. Those bastards just never change, do they? They were selling votes from the very first season, spinning all sorts of ludicrous HT, like calling them stocks. And they're back at it again. They really like profiting off these kids, huh? LOL. But the production team was probably on cloud 9 right about now, since it wasn't the contestants who were being criticized. The second season had failed because some of the most popular contestants had misbehaved, a fatal flaw in the way the show was set up. This season, the production team had purposefully highlighted the cruel nature of the program, overshadowing the unfortunate impression left by the previous season. Survival programs were always tough, regardless of whether they were openly cruel or made an effort to hide it. Perhaps stirring up interest in this way would be better for the contestants as well, since, thanks to the increased media attention, posts like the following that were beginning to appear. A summary of the platinum grade in Season 3 of Idol Inc. I took some screenshots of the Music Bomb performance. I'm only making this post because I feel bad that actually good dancers are appearing on shows like this, so please refrain from leaving malicious comments. And commenters usually only had a lot to say about the most good-looking of the contestants or those with big smiles on their faces, but some of them mentioned Park Moon Day as well. It was deeply strange reading them. They mostly called me cute or pointed out that guys who looked like me were on trend these days. I rewatched the video because I found this Park Moon Day guy cute, but he didn't get much screen time TT. But if you watch the trailer, it seems he did well in the initial audition. So I'm thinking about watching the show. I didn't know how to feel about that. Never in my life had anyone expressed such an open interest in me. I'd wondered what it might feel like to be an idol when I was in college selling fan cams. But it never ceased to amaze me how much time and money fans were willing to invest in people they had never even met. Maybe that was just because both time and money had been hard to come by for most of my life. It was even harder to wrap my head around the idea that I was now the target of such attention. But I didn't hate the feeling. What should I do next time? Suddenly, I couldn't sit still. After skimming through all of the comments, I thought about where I wanted to invest my points next. At that precise moment, a window appeared. The beginning of fame. 1,000 people have taken notice of you. Pick your general trait. Click, so I get notifications about this sort of thing too. I read the message with some surprise. The prompt to pick a trait felt familiar thanks to the message I'd gotten before, when I'd been rewarded for performing on stage for the first time. I clicked it, and the same slot machine appeared. There were gray slots accompanied by the occasional copper ones, as before. I hope I get a trait that boosts my physical attractiveness or charm this time. I was more excited than I had been the last time, waiting for the slot machine to stop spinning. As the images slowly slid to a stop, another pop-up message appeared. Jackpot! You won a hero trait.